And now, here is Coretta McDonald, Member of Parliament and host of Advancing the Cause.
Well, good night to you. And welcome to another episode of Advancing the Cause. We're here again this evening to fill you in with lots and lots of information. Like I said, we have been giving you factual information. We don't have to prop up anything. We don't have to bluff you. We don't have to tell you the things that you want to hear. What we do is tell you what is the truth. And we highlight events that are happening throughout this country. And so this evening, I want to start off advancing the cause by sending out happy birthday wishes to all those who are celebrating birthdays, those who would have celebrated birthdays today, those who would have celebrated yesterday, and those who would have celebrated birthdays over the last couple of days. Happy birthday to you. But in particular, I want to say special happy birthday to three wonderful young ladies. We have Miss Beverly Dijon. She is celebrating 50 years today, her 50th birth anniversary. Bev, the teachers wish you happy birthday. I am wishing you happy birthday. And the family of Advancing the Cause, we're all wishing you happy birthday. 50 is a big one. And so, Bev, we expect you to celebrate with all the glamour and all the posh and all the everything. You just have a good time, my dear. But remember to stay safe. And then we move on to another special young lady who is celebrating her 96th birthday. She celebrated her 96th birthday yesterday. And that young lady is Mistress Violet Rodriguez, better known as Auntie Punce, from way out there at Nerney on the quarantine. Happy birthday to you, Auntie Punce, 96 years. And yes, we want to see much more of you. So we wish you God's strength and we pray that He's going to continue to bless you. And then we have 105 coming from a sister on the Essequibo coast. Well, this is a really big one. 105 years old today. And so we wish you everything that is good. We wish you God's richest blessings. And we pray that there are going to be many more days and many more years for you to be with us. And of course, we have to learn and we have to hear from you, as a matter of fact, and the whole history, the whole episode behind this length of years that you would have lived. 105 years old, 96 years old, and 50 years old. Happy birthday to you, wonderful ladies. And to everyone else who's celebrating birthdays and those who are going to be celebrating their birthdays later this week, happy birthday in advance to you, and may God continue to richly bless you and do enjoy a full year. And we're here tonight and we want to talk about what's been happening. And so our issue tonight that we're going to be dealing with is Guyana, our own dear Guyana. She's going to be celebrating 56 years as an independent nation. And while we're doing that and we're getting our acts together, I want to encourage you to share the live. Call up your friends, call up your neighbors, call up everybody else, tell them Advancing the Cause is on. And so we want to say good night to all those persons who are watching us from right here in Georgetown, right here across this country. Yes, we have persons who are way out in the Pomeroon, way out in Port Kaituma, Kukwani, iTunes. We have folks from way up there in Oriala. And so we have persons all around who are watching us. And I want to say good night, good night, good night to you. I'm not sure. Yes, maybe we're seeing Miss Cummins, Tonya Cummins, and Stephanie Pearson, and Patricia, and Brenda, and everybody else who's watching right now. And I'm saying good night to you. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Advancing the Cause. And yes, call up your friend, tell them we're on, tell them to tune in, tell them to send their comments to us. And so, yes, it's here. 56 years of being an independent nation. And so we move straight to the highlights of tonight's program. Some of our highlights for tonight's program are we've seen taxi driver Matthew Monroe walking as a free man after he would have been in prison for 5 years on a murder charge. He has been charged with the murder of little Miss Branch. And the prosecution would have said that they have no direct evidence to link this man to the crime. And so he is now a free man. I know this is quite disheartening, and it brings the pain all over again for the those immediate family members and the friends of Miss Branch because of the brutal way with which she was murdered. But you know what? God knows best, and God will be the judge of all of this. And then we have coming from the rain, the heavy rains that we would have had, we recognize that many places across this country, many communities across this country, they have experienced severe flooding. And some of those places where we would have had flooding are regions 9, regions 5, region 6, region 10, and the flooding as well in Georgetown. I remember the day before yesterday, I saw several parts of Charlestown, Alexander Village, South Rumvelt, and so many other areas, Tocqueville and so on, under severe heavy water, plenty water. And I'm hoping that with these water that we are having, around, that the relevant persons are putting systems in place to assist all of those citizens, all of those families who are being affected. I know in Region 9, 20 families would have been relocated in Region 9 because they were affected. In Region 5, we had 400 households that were affected. Region 6, I don't have the confirmed numbers, and Region 10, particularly in Kokwani and Ituni, we have severe flooding there, and in Georgetown as well. And so I'm saying, I'm hoping that the relevant authorities, they're on the ball and they're ready to give the kind of assistance to those persons who would have experienced this kind of flooding. And we're talking here about materials such as bleach and soap powder and disinfectant and those kinds of things, so that persons can sanitize their yards, they can sprinkle in the water and so on, and we don't have the issue of skin diseases breaking out there for those persons. So again, heavy flooding in some parts of this country, and I trust that our folks who are responsible, that they are going to offer the kind of assistance. And then we have the big one. Yes, this one would have created some bit of stir, where the Burnham's Foundation, they wrote the National Library 1 month ago seeking permission and approval to use a particular space there to host their exhibition. And on the day after approval would have been given, there was a call on the day of the exhibition, when the folks were already there to set their stuff up. They got a call to say that approval has been withdrawn because the library, they have an activity to do. Man, what kind of craziness we doing? Huh? You want to tell me that a big entity like the National Library, they're not sure about what they have on their calendar, that they would have given an approval for an activity, and then on the day, nobody remembered 2 days before, nobody remembered 3 days before, nobody remembered a week before? On the day of the event, you're calling the people to say they can't host this event anymore. You know, I'm not, this is very, very disgusting and very, very disrespectful. And I just want to boil this down by saying this here is stink and dirty and it's just wicked. Just wicked. 1 month ago, you gave approval. And then on the day of the event, you calling the people to tell them that you have an event, you have an activity, and you can't host their event any longer. This is just nasty. And you know what? It shows every time how wicked the PPP government is. That's what it shows, how wicked the PPP government is. All because this has got to do with LFSB, Lyndon Forbes, Samson Burnham. And you know what? We try all the time. There's a certain section of this society who try every time and all the time to try to downplay the contributions and the struggles and everything else that would have been made by Lyndon Forbes, Samson Burnham. But you know, every time they try to do that, they don't succeed. They don't succeed. Why can't we not recognize our leaders, whoever they are? Why can't we not recognize our leaders? Why are we always trying to do something when somebody else is on show? I mean, Lyndon Forbes, Samson Burnham, he did so much for this country. And while we're talking about what he did for this country, we must remember that we cannot take away from him or from his legacy the fact that he was the person in the forefront in our struggle to independence. We cannot take that away. And it doesn't matter what we do, whether we pull the bust off from President's College or we decide to pull the name off from somewhere or pull something off from somewhere else, we cannot erase the contributions and what would have been laid out in history about this man who fought so much for our country. And so come on, National Library, don't allow the management of National Library, don't allow yourselves to be used as tools for the PPP. Don't be a puppet. When people want to make their calls, let them make their calls themselves. Don't put you in the forefront to make calls for them, because we know that this wasn't coming from you. We know that for a fact. And as we move on, we have more confusion again in the GPSU's credit union with the management team. More confusion again. I am not sure why we're having all of these confusion over people's money. The members are the ones who must have the say. Why are we having a management committee moving? It seems as if no confidence motion is medicine now. So every 2 minutes we have a no confidence motion, a no confidence motion, a no confidence motion. So I've learned that we had another no confidence motion that would have been moved against the vice chairman. So we now have a new chairman, vice chairman who are acting in the capacity. When are we going to stop this kind of foolishness? Why don't we use this same kind of energy to assist those same public servants to get increases in their salaries? Why can't we not allow for the same energies to be used to stand up and face the government, face off, and let them know that public servants are being bullied and they're treated as slaves? Why can't we use it to do that? Rather than doing that, we're taking the people's money and we want to squander it and we want to do all sorts of things. I think we have a little tape there that illustrates the way some of the members were treating some of the management committee members. They were trying to treat some of our people. I'm not sure if the operator has that there or if it's ready, but we're going to deal with that. And again, this no confidence thing, y'all stop this foolishness. Unless you're absolutely sure about what you want to do, stop this kind of craziness. Just stop this kind of craziness. And then, yes, we go on again. The moving from the National Library, and then we're going straight to the National Cultural Center now. National Cultural Center, you know what we have happening there now? The fees for rental, it has moved now to 600%, 600% increase for the rental. So you know what happening there? Y'all take the some of y'all local promoters, y'all can't carry y'all promotions to the National Cultural Center. Can't carry it there. Y'all on link show management. Well, I'll you try right there. Unless you have your monies to pay, you can't carry it there because of the fees that you now have to pay from 80,000. I'm being told to 500,000. Some all kinds of craziness happening. But if the operator has got the video there to show us what has happened with the GPS Use Credit Union, I know we had an incident where the members had a face-off with Jermaine Hermanstein, and then there was the members questioning some of the folks there from the management committee, asking why they can't sit as observers while they're having their meetings. So while our operator is going to get that for us, I'm going to continue with our highlights. And then we have moving from the National Library to the National Cultural Center. We have and moving from the GPS Use Credit Union, we have Police Constable Shonette, can't remember what is her name. She has been fired. She has been fired by the Commissioner of Police acting. Well, I tell you, we can't get better than this, you know. We can't get better than this. After she was spat on, after she was called a black monkey, after she was assaulted, she's now being fired. I tell you, Guyana nice, you know, Guyana nice, real bad. And then we move from her to this one. Well, this one came before, where a police officer was bitten, and rather than the police officer receiving any form of satisfaction or justice, he was transferred to another location. And so you see, because we encourage all of these things to happen to our servicemen and women, everybody feel they could take their eyes and pass them. So you know what happened yesterday? A taxi driver yesterday decided that he could put on a little cocktail. Don't let me say the word. He go put on a cocktail on a traffic rank. Well, that traffic rank pleased my heart. Let me tell you this. He pleased my heart because he delivered the rod of correction on him. You don't disrespect people like that. If you're being spoken to, then just adhere. Ask your questions respectfully. Make your comments. Question whatever you want to question, but do that respectfully. And don't feel that you can scramble people and you can want to disrespect persons. I've seen it happen in the teaching fraternity. I've seen it happen elsewhere. Now we're having it with the police, the servicemen and women. We're having this being meted out to them. And this is happening because the persons who are supposed to be protecting these servicemen and women, they are not protecting them. And so everybody feel that they can do whatever they want to our servicemen and women or to our public servants. Well, you know what? I waiting to see what gonna happen. Hey, I waiting for see what gonna happen to this traffic rank. Because like I said, the one before who was bitten, he was transferred. The young lady who was spat on, she was dismissed. Even though she sent in a resignation, she has been given a dismissal letter. And now we have this young traffic officer. Well, I waited for see what they can do to him. But we're moving on because we have got quite a lot of things to talk about. So we're moving on because we have a guest also who's going to be with us. We're moving on. And then we're running and we're trying to run away from it, but we can't run away from it. Just the other day at the Agriculture Expo Fest, whatever it was, we heard coming from every single leader, head of state, we heard them talking about produce or perish. And you know what? Those very words were the words of that great visionary, that son of the soil, that father of this nation, Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham, who way back then was saying to us, plant something in your yard, throw down a seed here, put something in the backyard. Let's produce or we'll perish. Let's produce so that we don't have to import this and we don't have to import that. But you know what? We felt that LFS Burnham was being too harsh on this on us. And persons felt that LFS Burnham he wanted to punish people, and he didn't want this to come and that to come and the other to come. And so we decided that we were not going to adhere to that. But you know what? We adhere to it now. We adhere to it now. So it's produce or perish. Produce or perish. Yes, and we're going boots on the ground. Boots on the ground we're going. So the boots on the ground now is produce or perish. Produce or perish. And we heard that loud. Very, very loud we heard that. And so my people, let me encourage you. Put 2 seeds down in your yard. Put 2 seeds down right in the front yard or in the backyard. Encourage your neighbors to do the same thing. So we can plant some okras, we can plant some bora, we can plant some corilla, we can plant some pumpkin, and we can share with each other. We can sell to other villages. Come on, produce or perish. And then we move to COVID. Way out on the other side, we move to COVID. And so there's a 6-month-old boy who died in New Amsterdam as a result of COVID-19. And so our numbers now are at 1,232. Those are the total deaths according to our health sources. And then I was talking earlier about the flooding in Region 9. And then I just got some information where persons are asking the RDC and the REO to come on, man, do something better for these people. You have them in a shelter, but in that shelter, the toilets are on the outside and they're underwater. What kind of business we driving? You having these people in a shelter, but there is no washroom facility available. What we really doing, man? Come on, REO Region 9 and RDC. Come, y'all fix this thing. Fix this business. You can't have people in a shelter and they don't have toilets, you know? Because like my very good friend Sherrod would say, you encouraging S&S. And we don't want that, because if that area is flooded and you're going to encourage S&S, then we looking to create problems. We don't want that happening. And so let's ensure that we have proper toilets so that these people can use the toilets. And with over 74 persons, or I think 70, yes, I think it's 20 families were relocated. And the 20 families could lead to a large number. So let's have proper facilities for the people who are there in that shelter. And then we saw several police stations and police outposts that were commissioned all week this week. During this week and maybe sometime last week, we saw several police stations and outposts being commissioned. We had the outpost at Cummins Lodge in the Cummins Lodge area, and that one cost $7 million. $7 million. And then we had the Albion police station, brand new police station at Albion, $74.8 million. And then we had the Wim police station, $67.6 million. And then we had the New Amsterdam police station, $150 million. Now, I'm being told that some of these police stations, they are equipped with rooms to house juveniles and rooms to house children and rooms for where you can go there and have your business don't have to be on the open, and several other rooms I'm being told that they have there. But all I want to say to you is that these police stations and outposts that have been commissioned, I hope they are fully equipped to house the policemen. I hope they are fully equipped with the technology that is available, so that our policemen and our policewomen, they'll be able to transact their business very smoothly. They can send messages. They have internet that they can use to get information, to secure information, and to send information on, and that we have proper telephones and so on in those buildings, so that the work of the police can be done very smoothly. You see, it's okay to commission big buildings and to talk about the monies that we spend, but it would be a waste of time to spend a whole set of monies and and the place is not properly it's not properly fixed. And I would want to urge that we take care of those buildings, You know, we always go and do big fancy things. I remember we had there we bought lots and lots of equipment, and I noticed that they get a fire service that some $200 million was spent in new equipment, to acquire new equipment for them to fight fire. I hope some of those equipment would not be like the one that we had there, the water cannon that never worked. So come on, ensure that when we spend these monies, that these monies are spent to do things that are worthwhile, and they can be of benefit not only to the servicemen and women, but to the communities that they are located in. And then we go to the constitutional posts, and there's this back and forth and back and forth. And, you know, I noticed we recognize that the leader of the opposition, as well as the installed president, they met and they talked about these constitutional agencies, these constitutional bodies, the Teaching Service Commission, Public Service Commission, and all the commissions that you can think about. They're talking about them. And we recognize that today we have seen Madam Gail Teixeira saying that the president does not have to justify. Man, look, if you don't have anything to hide, you can justify. You can say what you have. You can talk about whoever you have identified to head these commissions, because you have nothing to hide. Why are you jumping around the place? I mean, you're hopping like frogs around the place. If you have nothing to hide, say what you have to say. Just give reasons. Look, I want to appoint Tom Jones because Tom Jones is qualified in this area. Tom Jones can do so. Tom Jones has the experience here, and these are the references and so on. Why are you hiding these things, man? And that is why we always have to say that you're keeping some of these positions for your families, your friends, and your cronies, the people you can control. And that is why you're saying that you don't have to justify. But we are learning every day. Every day we are recognizing who we have to deal with. And we know that as long as the PPP come around, whenever they come around, is a whole lot of foolishness we're going to have. All the corruption that you can talk about, yes, it's there again. And so we're moving on. We saw the police and the EPA come into an agreement that they're going to be working on noise nuisance. I think this one here is a very, very important one. In many communities, we are hearing our citizens complaining about noise nuisance. And so I'm happy that they're working together and they're going to be dealing with this. And then today, on the eve of our 56th anniversary, we recognize that Rexos were given instructions, as a matter of fact, that no opposition member should speak at these flag raising ceremonies. What kind of crap is this? Huh? You're talking about one Guyana and one Guyana and one Guyana, but it seems as if the opposition is not part of this one Guyana. It seems as if opposition villages are not part of this one Guyana. What really are we doing? And so I noted that in Region 4, there was a whole confusion there where the name was taken off, a new program was done. What kind of craziness is this? However, I think things would have better sense prevailed and things worked out. And so we had the opposition members speaking at some of these places where they were identified to speak. I recognize that we have our guests in studio, and so I would want to pause for a couple of minutes to recognize our guest. He's no stranger to this program, and so my brother, my friend, my comrade, bona fide citizen of this country, Solomon Sharma, welcome to Advancing the Cause. It's good to have you here, sir. How are you doing this evening?
Thanks for having me on the program, Sister Coretta McDonald. And let me also take this time to wish you a happy Independence celebration as we are on the eve of our 56th anniversary.
We're just gonna have to hold for a while because I think your mic is a bit muted, or it's my system here. But yes, let's try to
Yes,
get that up.
yes.
Yes, I'm hearing you loud and clear now, and I
Well,
think our
Tiffany,
viewers are
again,
hearing
thanks
you.
for having me on the program. Good evening to your audience. And let me take this time as we approach our independence on the eve of our 56th to wish you a happy independence.
Thank you so much, my dear. And I was just talking about on the eve of our independence, we usually have these flag raising activities in several parts of the country. We recognize that we have none in Georgetown this time around, but it has gone to Anna Regina on the Essequibo coast, where lots and lots of hype is happening there. And in Region 4, where we would have had flag raising ceremony today, I recognize that the name instructions were sent. I think it was sent to Linden too, where these persons who are part of the um, opposition, the opposition members, whether you're an MP or you're an opposition member, notably present opposition member, instructions were sent to the REOs not to allow them to speak at these forums. And I'm wondering whether we are really talking about one people, one nation, one destiny. Here is it, 56 years after we have been independent as a nation, we are going this way. Rather than moving forward, we are going backward. And so, Sharma, tonight we're going to talk about 56 years ago. I know you weren't there and I wasn't there 56 years ago, but we can talk from our standpoint, from where we came in, and what we were told by some others about what happened the 56 years ago. I did highlight on the program Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham, one of the chief citizens of this country, a visionary in every aspect. And I was highlighting the fact that long time ago, then he spoke about produce or perish. And many factors, many forces, many groups thought that Burnham wanted to punish us. And that's why he was telling us to plant this and plant edos and plant cassava and do this and do that. But now, just recently, we had the Agriculture Expo where we had several leaders from the Caribbean who were here, and they all boiled down to that point: produce or perish. And so, whether we try to throw away Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham's ideas or his ideology, we are returning right back to that. We can't run from it. We either produce or we perish. And so this is where we are going to start our discourse on this evening, by talking about where we are 56 years after.
Thanks for the topic. I know you said both you and I were not around. But I can say to you, our inheritance of our politics, our inheritance of what we see as a society today, comes directly from that point of our independence. Most of what we see, even though we could attribute some of it to our colonial past and even further back to our enslavement and indentureship movements, I think the quest, the independence that we pursue, the self-determination that we not only got out of independence, but when we went forward into republicanism, those elements are the very present elements with us today. Even the individuals that were on the forefront, as you mentioned, whether it's Comrade Leader Forbes Burnham or even Chedi Jagan and others. So the issue of independence, and one more element to independence, it was really a moment, even though in the early 60s, you had that sort of disturbance era. It was the quest for independence at the most important point that Guyanese found the reason to come together in that quest for breaking away from the colonial masters. So even that presented for us at that point one of the most pivotal moments, an opportunity for the races and for politics to come together. So 56 years on, I think, even though we know the impressions of what 1966 represented for Guyana, Our quest on the independence project is far from a reality to where it should be at the moment. As a young man, growing up in Guyana now and seeing what as a nation we could and should become, and many of those things you attributed to earlier as it relates to the state of our nation at the moment and the way our people are still being treated. So I think 56 years on, and for those who participated in the quest for independence, as a young man, as a young politician, as somebody who pays attention to history, we have much more work to be done. So, and I hope you just bear with me just one more, because I think many times when we look at our independence struggles and where we are, we take out of context the entire episode of what revolved around independence, including our geopolitical conditions, you know. And I think that lends itself as to then who becomes the father of the nation and why we see Burnham being elevated in that environment. Because at the time, the world was not in embracing of any communist sort of ideology. So in that quest, you had our electoral systems being changed to accommodate the issue of proportional representation. You had the merging of parties, and you cannot take away then Burnham's positioning as being the father of an independent state. So I think that is very important for us to appreciate what the geopolitical environment meant as we pursue independence, but where that allowed for Forbes Burnham to be placed as the father of an independent nation.
You know, Sharma, we have our children today, when you talk about history, they don't know. When you talk about Forbes Burnham, they ask you, well, who's he? You talk about Shady Jagan, they ask, who is he? And this is what we have failed to recognize our leaders. We see in other parts of the Caribbean, other parts of the world at large, where persons are upholding their past leaders who fought not only for independence, but many other things in their countries. They are looking up to them. They have statues of them, and they have all these holidays. We talk about Martin Luther King's Day, but here in Guyana, we want to downplay our leaders. And while we're downplaying our leaders, persons in other Caribbean territories are praising some of our leaders. And this is one of the I don't want to call it a calamity, but this is one of the failures of us as a people. And that is why so many things pass us by. One, two, that is why we are being treated so poorly sometimes when we leave the shores of Guyana, because of how we treat ourselves. And we have got to be able, as the younger generation, we have got to be able to bring this back into perspective, bring it where it ought to be. You know, I remember when I was going to school, and I'm sure you would remember that, leading up to our Independence Day, that entire week was called Youth Week.
Yes. Yeah.
And we were reflecting on all that happened. We saw the Union Jack, we saw our Guyana flag. We had that entire story being told all over again, which for us, it meant a sign of belonging, that we would have been able to accomplish something. And so we look at our flag and we look at the Union's Jack, and we try to compare and we talk about its beauty, our flag. We look at all the other symbols of nationhood that we have, our own money. We're able to elect our own president, have our own cabinet, and other ministers, which includes other ministers, our own national bird, our motto, all of these things. But you know what? Because we have, well, I shouldn't say we, a certain group of people, they've sought to distract from this. Rather than talking, and if you look at what has happened recently, rather than talking about our national motto, one people, one nation, one destiny, you hear what we're talking about? One Guyana.
Which really doesn't represent in itself a concept of anything ideological for people to say what this one Guyana is. And just on 2 points that you made earlier, the issue of where we are 56 years on as it relates to our political maturity is evident in even the Burnham Foundation being denied the opportunity to have on exhibition the founder leader of not only a political party, but of the independent state of Guyana. So you're
As,
going
as
to
a
be.
matter of fact, Sharma, let me stop you.
Mhm.
The first executive president of this country.
Certainly, but that's the point. So in all of that sort of mature understanding of what he represented and still represents in terms of policies, you spoke about the issue of the breadbasket of the Caribbean. Burnham was at the forefront, so he was ahead of his time, even as it relates to
Mhm.
Guyana becoming. We had the Berbice River project in the sort of production that came out of the Berbice River in Litco, milk, in small ruminants, in goats and sheep and pigs and legumes in the Berbice River and the whole intermediate savanna was under cultivation. And that was being done, and we are now talking about going back to that. You had the issue of moving CARICOM in a collective arrangement. CARICOM is now finding the spirit when Burnham was one of the founder leaders for that. You now have people in CARICOM states, talking about the quest for Republican status. Jamaica, we saw Barbados. We have 2 more islands that have indicated they want to have the Republicans. We were the first in this part of the world. So how could you now not recognize, not only nationally, of the independence project that Burnham was at the forefront in and brought us 56 years ago, but regional and internationally, the sort of stature, being even labeled among Caribbean 100 personality #1, above
Yep.
Bob Marley, above Fidel Castro.
Yes.
Who at this level are going to deny the opportunity for the rest of the country to see photographic exhibition of such an individual? And I think that in itself speaks to 56 years on the level of maturity of our politics and where we as young people, I mean a little gray, but in age, still should take this project in terms of, and we come to the second part of what you spoke about, those symbols. Those things capture the essence of what Guyana is, whether it's in our song, our national anthem, Dear Land of Guyana, whether it's in our flag, our golden arrowhead. These things were the rallying point. And in sociology, there is a perspective that is called symbolic interactionist. And, I always use this because it's a very obvious example of the way people connect ideologically with symbols and their belief system, how that drives it. So that drives you behind a one people, one nation, one destiny. I always say to people, I could hold up 2 index fingers, but to 2.6 billion people, you put it this way, it's a cross. It means something different to a whole lot of people. It's the same way we have neglected over the years under the People's Progressive Party. So identify, and we see it even in the celebration and commemoration of our flag raising events. The capital city, the capital, you don't leave the capital unmanned. The government don't leave the capital on a moment of independence. Like this moment, you have decentralization of the event being held. Of course, you have decentralization, but the centralized kind of identifying with the symbolic interactionist of what 56 years mean as an independent nation, you have abandoned that. You've literally left the capital unmanned. So I think those sort of behavior says that in 56 years, there is much more work as we pursue this independence project that we have to realize.
Sharma, I in my mind I'm thinking that in some other territory, those who would have abandoned the capital city, they would have been banished from the capital city. They can't come back. Because
this is pure politics.
you know,
Pure
the thing is,
necessary
you
politics.
have left the city, nothing happening in the city. And this is 56 years we're talking about here, you know.
Yes.
56 years. And I can say to you that not many of the ministers of government are 50 yet.
Hmm, hmm,
And,
hmm.
and so this blatant disregard for our history is of grave concern. And we should not allow these kinds of instances and issues and occurrences to go unnoticed.
It's
This
true.
is a shame
Well, well,
that
well,
on,
the
go ahead,
point you made, sorry to cut you there, but you
go ahead,
see, on
sorry.
that same note of the abandonment of the capital and moving the independence celebration, which is commemorated in every region, nevertheless, pure politics, because we saw within the last 48 hours, the entire government is in Essequibo making a point on different agendas. So
Mhm.
the other agenda now becomes making a mockery of such an important agenda, which is our independence project. That you mentioned earlier, where officials from different regions, so it is held in different regions, were prevented from speaking at some of these engagements. Well, I will say it different as a former chairman. We were never bullies, but we could not have been prevented from participating in a flag raising event. It was just impossible in my time. I don't know now how it becomes a complaint. I'm serious. Nobody could have stopped the chairman or the mayor or the representative in the region from speaking to the people. That's unheard of. That you're saying that now, to even allow that is the sort of disrespect that goes into diminishing how important the independence project is.
You see, I don't know whether the PPP think that independence is Barnum. And so if you have members of the, well, now we have the coalition, if you have the coalition members speaking, that it would take away from them. And this is being very petty, this is being very immature and childish. And this is what we see happening every single day. Every single day we see this happening. We just saw the DPP discontinuing charges against the attorney who spat on a police officer.
That could not have been. I think the admittance of the DPP is in the 24 hours after Ms. Bollers, um, as an individual, picketed the DPP, that she felt an explanation. So the DPP discontinued the case without an explanation. The sort of arrogance in the behavior that I don't even owe an explanation until a protest action occur and then an explanation followed, demonstrates that the PPP accept that she is unilaterally being judge, jury, and executioner in terms of this particular issue, because you would have adjusted. It means then this matter should have been put before a court of law and all the issues ventilated on the issue so that
Exactly
it
so.
could be fairly judged. And I think those are in the United States Human Rights Report last month. In fact, earlier this month, it outlined the sort of human rights violation in terms of pre-trial liberty and how people are, by the DPP and our criminal justice system, it denies people the fair level of justice that they deserve. And we see that happening to Ms. Bollers right now, being denied justice. And I think that's a very dangerous thing when, as a society, we can't depend on the courts and the justice system to represent and defend us.
And so all of this comes on the heels of our 56th independence anniversary. 56 years after we become an independent nation, we still can't get it right. We still don't understand that we are all Guyanese, and we should stop looking at each other as who's black and who's Indian and who's Amerindian and who this and who that. We just can't get it right. And you know what is the hurting fact is that we stand at forums and we preach this one love and peace and unity and all hands on deck, when in actual fact we don't mean anything that we say.
Well,
As a matter of fact,
The one Guyana concept and behavior is a perfect example of what you're saying.
as a matter of fact, just reflecting on what transpired a week ago when we saw the leader of the opposition meeting with the installed president, and they were supposed to be meeting 1 week after, and there was no meeting. There was no communication to say, well, we can't meet because of pressing issues, nothing. But yet we're talking about all hands on deck, and we're talking one Guyana. When these people can stop being so stink and dirty and nasty?
I think the opposition leader rightly called it for what it was, and it would have been surprising if he did not recognize that to be a blatant disrespect by the president and the behavior and treatment towards the leader of the opposition. This is not an individual. This is an office. This is a position that represents, as is still disputed because Petition 99 and other petitions are still before the court, an election that is inconclusive. To treat an office that still represents so much of the population in such scant disregard, I think you put the two issues of the treatment of not responding to the opposition leader appropriately. It took the opposition leader twice to find the sort of information before the first engagement on what is the agenda of the meeting to begin with. And then we saw Gail Teixeira coming out today saying that in essence, with or without the opposition leader, which takes away Article 13, which takes away meaningful consultation, that we will put whoever we want, like they did with the Natural Resource Fund. And that is exactly the message we got today, that we don't have to meet with you, or we will meet with you when we feel so. And besides, when we get to the point of identifying people for position, we can unilaterally do so nevertheless. That is the message we got today clearly from there.
And outside of that, you know, we got another message today coming from, I can't remember what is the judge's name. Is it Narsingh? I can't remember what is his name. But the whole case of the NRF fund, that came up today. And the judge said it, and I'm almost certain that it's out there already, that this is a serious matter. And he is not going to he's not going to allow himself to be set up, because this money is the people's money.
Yep. And I think when you watch in the reports coming out from the US, even in the Republic statement that was given by Biden, and even when we look at Sarah, the ambassador, and even the UN report, the human rights report, it spoke about we have never found so much wealth before. So the concern becomes oversight. Oversight, whether it's in Parliament, and the subcommittees in Parliament, and even oversight with regards to the establishment of the Natural Resource Fund, the committee that oversees that, and even the behavior of the government, whether it's Parliament itself and how the Speaker. We saw even today the members of Parliament complaining about the biggest oversight Public Accounts Committee not being able to function because the government is maneuvering to ensure that members are not available so that you have a quorum. So I think what you have when you look at the behavior of the PPP and how it's running the government, it is in absolute contradiction of any one Guyana, of bringing people on board, except one party running Guyana, period.
And you know, this is the worrying part of this whole thing, because I have seen, like I mentioned earlier, we have several parts in this country, several regions are flooded. And Region 10, it was not spared, especially the Kukwani and Ituni areas. And we have seen coming out of what happened in Region 5, immediate actions happening in Region 5, immediate measures have been put in place in Region 5, where we have 400 families that are affected. And right away, we saw the Minister of Agriculture putting systems in place to assist with the draining of the water and to assist families there who were affected. And we saw families being evacuated in Region 9. What is happening in Region 6?
Rightly so, Coretta. We have the resources to ensure that every single citizen is kept safe and provided for in any crisis. I, however, go back to last year. I was on a program with the now leader and opposition leader, Mr. Norton. We were on Dr. Rose's program, and I made this point that it is in the absence of preparation and planning. There is no national disaster program that the government give consideration for what occurred last year. There was no region that was spared in terms of how it was flooded. And the government had that approach in terms of how it went about dealing with the issue of flooding. It's the same that we see now, to the extent that in the flood relief grants that they distributed, it was so chaotic that the minister said he was going to launch an investigation. Nothing came out. But in Region 6 and 5, while the VP was there a few months ago, he is saying over 3,800 people collected duplicated flood relief grants. So they didn't even qualify for flood relief grant. They collected not only once, but sometimes 3 times. So that is the sort of management of crisis. And we hope that as we head forward into the May, June season, and we start to see floods, that we see a proper national plan on how to deal with this, so that we don't have a Region 5 and a Region 6 and a Region 10 competing, when every single Guyanese should be given the appropriate help while they're in a crisis mode.
Well, this is the same thing we said when we had the 25,000 COVID relief cash grant. There was no plan to say we have 8,000 persons and we are going to give to 8,000 persons. It was just willy-nilly, anywhere. And so you found in some areas, whether you're a tenant or not, you got. In some other areas, you had the tenant's son, the tenant's daughter-in-law, they all got. And in some areas, you were told, well, you're not the owner of the property, so you can't get. Now, the very same thing we shouted about then when the president said he's going to launch an audit, and that was a big thing. We're still waiting for the audit report. We have another occurrence here where the president said he's going to give monies to the people in the hinterland to assist them. No survey being done, no information gathering done to say how many persons you have there and how they are going to receive these monies. But we are going to see again people receiving duplicate, people receiving 4 times. You're going to see party supporters basically receiving these monies. You are going to find in some instances where some persons who live there will not get any of the monies. And I think the kind of foolishness that we're having after 56 years of being independent.
But this is deliberate. This is deliberate in, especially with those funds, correct? When you speak about the way those funds were handled, and not in a very holistic and planned manner, it is this stopgap measurement. So we're in a crisis of cost to live in. Every minute, chicken went up last week, bread went up the week before, greens are going up. Everything is on the increase except salaries. Everything is on the increase except the conditions of the working man and woman. But what the government is doing is not in a holistic way addressing the issue of what people's sufferings are. You see the very stopgap measure without justification of data to say who qualifies and who don't. And I think these are some of the points people like Professor Clive Thomas were making in terms of, should we move to cash grant or should we move to ensure people are given a more sustainable way of ensuring they have cash transfer in terms of benefiting equitable from the aisle distribution. So the government likes this chaos. I mean, in public policy management, there is such a policy called the garbage bin, and I like to say this is the policy management style of this government. You throw everything in the garbage bin, and what comes out is the policy that you are adopting and running. There's no plan. There is no consideration of how these things will affect moving forward.
And you see, this is also a way of not having to account for some of these monies. That's one. Two, it's another way of breathing corruption. And the three, it's one of their ways of being able to give to their supporters. Because, you know, the thing is, if we see this happening in every region, then we wouldn't have a problem with it. But when you see the concentration is on certain regions, and in regions where the suffering is greater, you're not having this same kind of emphasis, then it calls for concern. Again, 56 years ago, where are we? Are we moving forward or are we moving backward? Where are we after 56 years?
Well, like I said the Independence Project, it is still with work to be done. I think many opportunities were missed, and you see them every day, especially in this government's attitude, converting an ideological understanding of what one people, one nation, one destiny represents into a shell of an ideology of what one Guyana is, with no substance, no direction. There is no symbolism. The only quest for a symbol to represent one Guyana was the biggest flap in the bird that should look like an RP eagle, but was not. So you see that there is no substance to meet the form of a one Guyana quest. No substance in it. Even the Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture was apologetic in excluding the opposition from the Republic flag raising. And now you have invitation being given to opposition members on the 11th hour of the flag raising. You know, that sort of no substance to the farm. So 56 years on, what we see is a very immature political environment, perpetrated more so by the People's Progressive Party, having occupied the seat of government now for over 25 years, or just about in total. And even before, let us not forget that the Premier Chedi Jagan was in charge of, as representative of state, if not head of state, because we still were in the colonial system. But they have been able to manage as a party Guyana for quite some time. And I think in essence, 56 years on, you see the level of political immaturity that doesn't hold well as we look to move forward with our motto of one people, one nation, and one destiny.
I think, Sharma, as we reflect on where we came from, there is no doubt that we as a people have got a lot to do. We've got many, many steps to take to get to where we ought to be. As a matter of fact, while I'm speaking here, I'm remembering some folks who spoke with me just about 2 days ago. They are working offshore with ExxonMobil, and they tell you about the kind of injustices that is being meted out to them when they compare salaries, their salaries with salaries of other nationalities. It's way below. And so as a people, we have got much and plenty work to do in order to bring our people to where they ought to be, rather than this kind of fight down that we do every time. We fighting to keep this one down and fighting to keep that one down. And because you're part of the opposition, regardless of how intelligent you are and whatever skills you have to offer, they don't want you.
You're shut out. You're shut
You're,
out.
you're shut out.
You know, and
You're shut out.
what's sad about the understanding of this government and treatment towards the trade unionism and trade union movement is that this is the movement that birthed the political struggles that went towards the quest of independence movement and self-determination. and to ensure that it starts with the working man and woman, to ensure that they are treated right, given a fair shot and given a fair chance to make it. And to see now, not only at the level of multinational companies that are coming in and how locals are being treated, but general, how workers are being treated, even at the level of the state. And it brings you right back as we talk about the 56 years of independence and the ideological understanding that Burnham recognized that the nation, in terms of the direction we were going to take, we were not going to go into communism, but we're going to take a corporate socialism. So cooperative socialism allow for that sector of the state, cooperatives, trade unions, collectives, people who came together. We're going to be able to be part of owning how the state assets were going to be utilized, not just the private sector, but we see today is a heavy investment into private sector. Even today, the president was so boastful, the vice president, that we're going to give of the 1 billion pledge by the president last week, 140 million in fertilizers to farmers. Now, that's going to go to a few private people. The farmers on the Essequibo coast indeed need the help, but who gets to benefit from these large capital investments? The contractors that are going to be given the roads and the bridges, and all the people that are going to benefit, except the cooperatives, except the collective of Guyanese. And I think as you look at the application of our independence movement and the ideological quest that Forbes Burnham recognized that the tri-sector economy was going to provide the small man, being the real man in cooperatives and credit unions, are applicable now, very applicable now, when you see the treatment of workers and when you see the treatment of the average working man and woman in Guyana. I think it's very important for us to appreciate what the understanding of an independent state was for the likes of a Forbes Burnham in the application of the ideology as you look towards a cooperative socialist environment to ensure that people were part of inheriting and benefiting some of the patrimony of the state.
You see, again, we look at, when we look at numbering some of our accomplishments, we have quite a lot. But what have we done with those accomplishments? How far did we push those accomplishments so that we can be recognized? And here again, the trade unions come into play, cooperatives come into play, all these co-op societies come into play. All
Credit
of these
unions,
all these they all come into play. And you know what? According to the PPP, these entities reflect one kind of people. They reflect the whole establishment, the whole birth of these organizations reflect one person. And because of this one person, we cannot go forward with this, which in our mind and in the minds of persons who are right-minded is foolishness.
Well, the PPP is still listed as a socialist party. It is still listed as a communist, Leninist party in the thing. Never mind, the practice might be different. So I think even ideological, the PPP is more extreme in its political orientation as it relates to how it sees the management of the state, as opposed to a People's National Congress and what was being practiced by Forbes Burnham, for example, in ensuring cooperatives of people. Some of the biggest companies in America, especially agriculture and power generation, are cooperatives. So there's nothing bad about people having to be involved. Cooperatives in Guyana hold the third largest pool of money behind the state and the private sector. So you cannot escape the importance of the cooperative sector, the credit unions. And it's a shame to see what's happening with the public service credit union and some of the co-ops like LUCSL. So the PPP is dismantling this sector for reasons that they know this sector provides a heavy financial support for a certain class of people in this country.
And so at this point, I would want to encourage all the members of the Public Service Credit Union, all those members, to come out and have your voices being heard. We are the people who are supposed to dictate the pace with which that organization is run. And we should not allow a couple of persons to want to use this no confidence medicine that keeps sharing all over the place and that is being used inappropriately and illegally to decide how this organization is to be run. And so I want to ask all of our members to demand that we have this general membership meeting as early as possible so that we can quell all the kinds of foolishness that is happening within that organization. And I've been saying this over and over, and I'll continue to say it, that the Public Service Credit Union is the only organization that allows the small man to have a voice. Mm-hmm. That's the only organization that allows the small man to feel as if, yes, I can accomplish this or I can accomplish that. Because when you go there, you don't have to go around all the red tapes that are usually laid out there when you have to go to the commercial banks. And we should not allow this organization to be plagued with fleas and whatever else you want to call it, which will seek to destroy this organization. And I want to say this with no apologies. We have worked hard enough. Our foreparents have worked hard enough to ensure that these systems are in place so that we can benefit. And we will not allow a few persons who have different ideas to dismantle structures that were put in place there by our foreparents. And on
I like that you said the structures. I like that you call it the structure.
Of our 56th independence anniversary, I want to issue this call to all members who are all those who are members of that organization to come out,
including myself.
Stand out there, question the persons who are sitting there and telling themselves that they're members of the management team or management committee or whatever they call themselves. Ask them questions. Demand that you be part of meetings as observers, because that's your right. It's very, very crazy when we look at what is happening already to the masses out there who forms the public service. And then to have your own people treat you in that way. It says a lot of this. It's very, very, very disheartening. But Sharma, we've said so much about what is happening here and what is happening there. But when we look at what is happening in our court system, that's another disheartening factor too. That seeks out to kill the small man. I mean, 5 years ago, we had a man held in prison on remand for murder. And then the prosecution will turn up today to say, we have no evidence really linking this man to the crime. So this man walks free after you would have had him there in captivity for 5 years.
I think, like I said, the criminal justice system is, and it is he who feels it knows it. So that people who are not affected, and we can go to the family of the young lady that was murdered 5 years ago, and we could go to Ms. Bollers, that unless you are affected by a crime, and you see the way that the criminal justice system is stacked against you instead of ensuring you get justice, it is very frustrating, and it in itself demonstrates, even at 56 years as an independent nation, that as you look at the arms of state, whether it's the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, that aspect of the state, and they say you preserve the judiciary, it's sacrosanct, that you but at the end of the day, the behavior of the DPP the uh, the behavior of seeing pretrial liberty in terms of people being on remand, the issue of ensuring justice is given to people who are still looking for justice, such as that young lady's family, and never believing if they will get justice. And I think, again, not unless he who feels it knows it, understand how helpless a position that could feel like.
And Sharma, we can talk so much about this. We can talk about the Henry Boys. We can talk about Naresh Singh. We can
Yes,
talk about
yes,
the martyrs in Linden who were gunned down on that bridge. We can
yes.
talk about all those young men who were killed, those thousands of young men who were killed, those who just disappeared and you never heard anything else about them. Only those who feel it know it.
Certainly. Certainly. You
Again,
can talk about her in Boston. You can talk about Mr. Sampat, the two gentlemen who were gunned down on Mandela Avenue. Only recently, yeah, the gentleman passed away after being paralyzed for over a year and a half. So, and today they're still looking for justice. And those things made the Human Rights Report as the behavior of this PPP government that is a continuation of a behavior that we saw as a pattern years before while they were in office.
and Sharma, the thing is, so many persons are hurting. So many persons can't have closure to issues that would have occurred. And the 56 years after, there seemed to be no end to these issues. We're seeing, we talk about COVID. We're seeing COVID, the numbers are escalating in other parts of the world. But we here in Guyana, it seems as if COVID has left us. We are exceptional, so we have no more COVID. So we do what we want. We go wherever we want. We have all these big limes and these big parties and all these big gatherings. As a matter of fact, I saw letters coming from persons on the Essequibo coast asking the president not to host the flag raising ceremony there because they don't want COVID to come into their region. But these concerns have all gone on deaf ears. And so again, 56 years after, where are we? Are we about the people? Are we about self? Where are we 56 years after? And unless we can have the answers to these questions, proper answers to these questions, then it would not ignite that, sorry, it would not ignite that path and that the kind of energies for us to be able to sit and put that plan together to move us into another phase, which would take us not another 56 years to realize, but in another 2 or 3 or 5 years. But this cannot be done haphazardly. This have
We have to put our faith in the next generation. Right?
Well, I am worried for the next generation because let me tell you what, the generation of 20 years ago, their mentality is totally different from the generation we had 20 years before them. Because the generation of 20 or 25 years who we have presently with us now, they think about get rich quick and die young.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the
Well,
mentality.
well, I know that, and I think that it is what is available to them. They see this sort of mean-spirited, zero-sum politics that is being practiced, especially coming from the People's Progressive Party. They see that same mentality of get-rich-quick scheme, not paying attention, but they do, and we have to recognize this in the pattern of the voting trends of 2006 to 2011 to 2015, where when it occurred in the past, when it was through rigged padding of the list, nevertheless, the People's Progressive Party won. They did so heavily on impressing on race and ethnicity. And I think that you saw a pause in that sort of behavior over the past 3 electoral cycles. And I think that is where you have to capitalize on in terms of ensuring more young people and more people who want to know what 56 years on And let me just make this point. You see, the civil rights movement in America is a continuous quest. So people have something to struggle for and against continuously. The treatment of Afro Americans and the treatment of minorities in general. In Guyana, it was our independence struggles that rallied people with a common understanding for self-determination and something to struggle against. I think after that period, we as Guyanese thought we don't have anything to struggle for. We don't have to struggle against anything. And I think this is where now we have to say to young people, this generation, that the struggle continues. The struggle to ensure you have a fair criminal justice system, the struggle to ensure that the working class is treated fairly and equally, the struggle to ensure that people are given fair share so that they can live as decent Guyanese. Those things now we have to make, as we did in the last 3 electoral cycle, the new struggle, the struggle against corruption, the struggle against ignorance and poverty. Those are things we have to then be able to articulate to people as we move forward on a common quest to changing the historical context in which we are just in a perpetual battle against each other.
And we must add the struggle and the fight that we have to put up when it comes to abuse of women. That's a big one on the table, and I'm not sure how many persons are really following that trend. Outside of that trend, we have to be able to recognize and to respect our servicemen and women. Because if I can roll back to what has happened to some of our police officers, we saw a police officer being bitten by at the Demerara Harbor Bridge when he was directing the traffic, and he was saying to a young lady, "You can't go here, you have to hold on." We saw the scuffle there, and he was bitten. And rather than offering the kind of satisfaction to the police officer, he was transferred. And then we saw what happened to Shawnette Bollers. And then we saw today, or it might have been yesterday, I think it was, where a taxi driver in Berbice felt that he could assault a traffic rank.
The policeman.
And it's disgusting when you see the kinds of comments that persons are putting up there, thinking that the police officer was wrong, he should not have defended himself. Well, you know what? They need to go do some reading, and they'll understand that as long as you're an officer and people come into your face, then they're violating you. And you have every right to defend yourself. And like I said, the officer at the Demerara Harbor Bridge, he was transferred. Bollers was issued yesterday with a dismissal letter. And so I'm waiting to see what is going to happen to this young officer from Berbice. I'm waiting to see what kind of fate he is going to receive at the hands of his superiors.
But the thing is, these investigations are done, actions are taken, and we are not, as a public, any wiser as to the recommendations or why the actions were taken. And we see this whether it's in the fire. So the fires, we heard Guard Mosley and others ask about the fire at the DPP office. Today we're still awaiting the report. So you mentioned something earlier about institutions, and it goes right to the core of a culture structure relationship in these institutions. The structures of these institutions, especially the Guyana Police Force. I think over the past several months, the police force, even today, the chief whip is taking the acting commissioner of the police force to court to question his legitimacy as commissioner. Those sort of environment, we still have the absence of a police service commission that brings about disciplinary and promotion issues. So you still have people who are called sergeant but can't wear 3 stripes. That sort of morality, that sort of morale, in fact, morale of the force is so low that you see the public at times think that the police force, and we have so many hard and decent police officers. Of course, you have some who bring shame and embarrassment to the force, but like the state of the force is one where, because of the sort of structure that exists, very weakened, without much morale. You have the sort of culture that we see attached to the force of people think they can beat up police and the way police sometimes behave, that people feel that they're helpless in terms of getting protection from the side of law and order.
Well, Sharma, it's that time that we're coming down to program time, when you're in these kinds of discussion and you want to go on, then the time starts ticking on you. But, Sharma, I want to say that I'm hoping that while persons are listening, they don't just only listen, but persons are ready to act on the kind of discussion that we would have had here this evening. Because again, 56 years, and where are we? We had the North Rumvelt Multilateral School, a part of it burnt. We've not heard what the reports are, or what the report, we don't know what the report would be, but yet we are hearing nothing about rebuilding of that school or that part of the school that was demolished by fire. We had the fire again at Brickdam Police Station, and in the midst of everything, everything there was cleared. So you don't know what kind of investigation would have been launched and what is going to be our report. And so all these fires that we are seeing all over the place conveniently, and it's amazing how you see some ministers of government, they're on the scene pronto, they're on the scene. These are cause for concern. And as a people, after 56 years, we really, really need to take stock of where we want to be and what we're going to be teaching the generation that is after us and the generation that will come after that generation. Of course, we keep talking about COVID and the dent that COVID would have made on us as a nation, on our children. But what do we plan to do to improve on that and to ensure that we don't have this kind of dent remaining with us? It means, therefore, that as senior folks, we have got to be able to make that conscious change and to ensure that with that change, our legacy and history will record us as being agents of change and progress. Unless we have that kind of purpose in our minds, then we'll continue for another 56 years still wondering, where are we? My brother, I want to thank you for being here on this episode of Advancing the Cause. 56 years, where are we? I'll take your closing thoughts before I give some words of some reminders to our viewers.
Well, thanks for having me on, MP McDonald. Thanks for the opportunity to share on this, the eve of our independence. I always say that of the movements in our nation's history, whether those were the emancipation, village movements, the independence and Republican movement, which was really as some people would put it, the final quest for self-determination. I don't think we should stop there. Self-determination continues. We see that coming in different forms, such as neo-colonialism and how these multinationals are running things in a different neoliberalist type of. So I think it's just transform. I think we now have to get, as you mentioned earlier, the sort of enlightenment information to the younger population and generation so that they cannot struggle and limp along for the next 56 years, but ensure that we get it right very sharply. So I encourage you to do as your program says, continue to advance the cause so that in the shortest possible time, this nation could be a very proud one people, one nation, one destiny.
Thank you so much, my brother. It's always a pleasure to have you here. But before I go, I must let you know, our viewers, that we have a couple more days for those persons who have not registered. You have a couple more days to do that so that you can receive your ID cards and that your names are going to be added to that list. So for those who have not done so, you need to do so. I must remind you too that COVID is alive and it's kicking, and COVID kills. So you have to take care of you. You have to encourage others to take care of themselves so that we can enjoy the benefits that this great country of ours has got to offer. More so since we have now been labeled as the Dubai of the Caribbean, we want you to be here to be a part of this. And to everyone else who has been watching Advancing the Cause, we want to thank you for being here. And we trust that you're going to share the message, share the word. Let them know next week at 6:30 we'll have another episode of Advancing the Cause. On this note, I want to say to all of us, happy 56th anniversary. Guyana, we are a proud people. And I'm sorry that we don't have this song, I Want to Build This Land That Belongs to Me, to share, to play with you or to play for you. But let me encourage all of us to build this land that belongs to all of us. Do have a good night. Take care. Enjoy the holiday tomorrow. And I'll see you again next week at the same time. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching our program. See you right back here, same place, same time. And remember, hold the line of battle, comrades. Our victory is sure.